everyone in this room, I'm sure, has heard about the person that I'm about to announce an award for. So HCU Network America, which formed in 2016, and this is our third patient family meeting since we formed, and we started a tradition of giving out what we call the HCU Hero Award at every meeting. And we do that to recognize an individual who has had a significant impact on the HCU community. And it's usually based upon a lifetime of work, not just 1 or 2 years, but really a lifetime of work and commitment. And very importantly, the positive contributions they have made on the lives of patients and families who are affected by homocystinuria. We've had 2 past winners, and they include Dr. Harvey Levy, who I know you're very familiar with, Marion, in 2016, and Dr. Jan Kraus, who I'm sure you're familiar with. I know he actually had introduced me to Harvey at the SIMD meeting in a Silmar in, I think it was 2011 or 2012. And so unfortunately, Dr. Kraus was alive when we made the decision on the award, and I invited him to our patient meeting in Indianapolis without telling him why. We wanted to surprise him. And he said he hoped he could come, but he had cancer at the time, and unfortunately, he passed away before he was able to. And my biggest regret is when I talked to him on the phone, I didn't tell him that he was getting the award. I expected him to be there. So we had to award it posthumously to Ava Kraus. Now, we intentionally waited. We thought about honoring Dr. Mudd at our first or second meeting, but they were in Boston and Indianapolis, and we really wanted his family to be here. Danae promised me we could have our third meeting in the Washington, D.C. area, which made sense with the experts at NIH and Dr. Chapman, who's at Children's National, who would participate in the meeting, and it's a nice central area for the eastern part of the United States. So we wanted all of you to be here and his colleagues from NIH. And so I'm really honored to announce that this award, unfortunately, posthumously is going to Dr. Harvey Mudd. Dr. Mudd was considered the father of methionine metabolism. He spent his career unraveling the pathways of methionine metabolism, and he discovered several genetic diseases due to defects in the pathways. He helped develop treatments to address these disorders, and he gave advice to clinicians and families around the world when they were affected and had questions about high methionine or homocysteine or other levels. I feel like Dr. Mudd personally affected my family. In 1963, I had a sister at age 6 who was severely nearsighted. She was sitting on top of the TV. So my parents took her to an ophthalmologist in the Buffalo area who said, I can address her vision issues, but I just heard about this disease because of the publicity in 1963 when Dr. Mudd did a liver biopsy in a young female 12-year-old patient with classical homocystinuria because he suspected that it was a liver enzyme defect. And he did the liver biopsy, and sure enough, he was right. And there was a lot of publicity around that, including a publication. Well, this ophthalmologist had read about it and said to my parents, you need to take your daughter to Children's Hospital in Buffalo because there's this metabolic disease that she might be affected by. So they took her. She was diagnosed with classical HCU. We were all then tested. My 2-year-old sister was also diagnosed with classical HCU. Now, as they were treated, their clinician at Children's Hospital in Buffalo kept reaching out to a colleague at the NIH to get advice. I have no doubt that that was Dr. Mudd. So on behalf of my family, we thank you. Unfortunately, they passed away at ages 14 and 9 because there weren't the treatments available like they are today. Well, Dr. Mudd later determined, after he did this liver biopsy and helped everyone to understand what the cause of the disease was, he then determined that there was a subset of classical HCU patients that could be effectively treated with pyridoxine, and that made a huge impact. It's estimated that it could be up to half of patients with classical HCU. He also published the first natural history study done for classical HCU, and it's the one that's still often quoted today, though we have a new one going on that Dr. Chapman and others are involved in, and we look forward to that publication. And I know we're going to see much better outcomes today than, unfortunately, he found in the 1980s. And I remember Dr. Levy telling me that there are stacks of papers still on the floor somewhere from all of the case records that he gathered around the world in order to do this natural history study. But I've been at many global meetings with experts, and there's always a presenter, if not several, who have slides that show his results from that natural history study. So that was extremely helpful in understanding the course of the disease and the outcomes in patients. Well, Dr. Harvey Levy was a colleague and close friend of Dr. Mudd. He really regrets he could not be here with us today. He collaborated with him on the natural history study and many other projects. But he sends his warm regards to you, Marion, and your family, and he helped us figure out how to get a hold of you. So he was instrumental in getting you here. But he asked that we read a few comments, and I'll close with those comments. Harvey Mudd was the father of methionine metabolic disorders. Beginning with his identification of the enzyme defect in homocystinuria, he co-discovered cobalamin C disorder as the first known human disorder of vitamin B metabolism, thereby extending our concept of homocystinuria as a key feature of related disorders rather than a single disease, and he identified new disorders that produce hypermethionemia. He had no equal in our understanding of how critical methionine metabolism is to human homeostasis. So I would now like to present the award to the family of Dr. Harvey Mudd, who unfortunately passed away in 2014. I'd like you to accept our gratitude and thanks for all of his contributions to the scientific knowledge base we have on homocysteinurias and the contributions to the care of every person in this room and throughout the world with this disease. Please accept this award in his honor.
Of all the things in the world that would make Harvey Mudd happy and rejoice, it will be to hear that his work affected your lives positively. It was the effort, it was the work that he devoted his life to. In fact, when he was in the hospital and really he was dying, the doctors would look at him and say, Harvey is still studying. Harvey is still at work. So, but anyway, he died doing what he was interested in and cared about, which was the health of all of you. Thank you so much for this occasion.
And do you see over here we have Dr. Jerry Berry, remember him from
yes, I do.
Boston?
Yes.
And Charles Vendetti.
I remember his name. Oh, yes, I do.
And Irene Manoli.
I should
And
remember what.
I'm sorry, Jennifer Sloan, and there was someone from Moderna. Are you in the room who used to? I guess they couldn't be here. There's a woman who works now for Moderna who said she spent 10 years working with him at the
good.
NIH.
What's her name?
I don't know.
Moderna.
Maria Pereira?
Maria.
Pereira? Oh, Nuria.
Nuria. I think I do remember Nuria.
Yeah,
I
she
think
was
I
going
do.
to try to be
I can't picture her face right now, but the name rings a bell.
Any other family members want to say anything? Whoops, we do. Want to pass the
sweet.
mic down?
Yes, certainly.
Hi, my name's Dania Mccoy, and my daughter is a metabolic patient. I'm just going to step back so I don't have my back to anyone. So when Kennedy was born in 2011, there was something going on metabolic with her, and no one could figure out what it was. And we had been to several children's hospitals, and they all kept saying, there's something metabolic, but we've never seen this before. We don't know what this is. So I contacted Dr. Kevin Strauss from the Clinic for Special Children, who mainly deals with Amish and Mennonite communities, and said, we're not Amish or Mennonite, but could you please look at my daughter's medical records and see if you can help us? And he looked at them and called just like a day or two later and said, he had said to us, this is beyond our scope of expertise. I have never seen this before. I think there's only one man in the country who might be able to help you. He's 86 years old, retired from the NIH. Here's his home phone number. Good luck. And so I had no idea that I was calling Dr. Harvey Mudd when I dialed that. I was just a mom on a mission. And he answered and said, hello. And I said, hello, this is who I am, and I really need your help. And we spoke for almost 2 hours in our first phone conversation. And before hanging up, he said, I'm pretty sure your daughter has S-adenosyl homocysteine hydrolase deficiency, but I'm going to have to make sure. And I thought, okay, whatever you say this is, we're going to go with. And so we were able to meet him and Marion when Kennedy was just a year and a half old, and they have welcomed us into their family ever since. And we are so humbled and blessed. And I had 11 months with Harvey, and we spoke almost daily. And he is so special to me. And I now work my daughter ended up having a transplant, which they found was the cure for her metabolic disease, and I now work in transplant. And there's some times where I need to be brave and speak up, and I always channel Harvey in those moments because he really was a Robin Hood for the kids he was helping. And so I'll leave you with this story. For those of you that didn't know him personally, I hope this story gives you an idea of who he was. So during the government shutdown in 2013, 2012, I had in my cell phone Dr. Mudd office, Dr. Mudd home, and it was about 7 p.m. on a random weeknight, and my phone rang, and I looked at it, and it said Dr. Mudd office. And for a second, I thought, well, NIH is a government building, but I didn't think much of it. And so I answered, and I said hello, and he said, Dania. I said, yes, Dr. Mudd. He said, I'm in the NIH. I said, okay. He said, I got past the armed guards. I said, what are you doing there? And he said, I need to get my formulas to make sure that enough protein is crossing Kennedy's blood-brain barrier. And I didn't have them at home, so I had to come get them. I said, please do not get arrested for my daughter. And his response was, Dania, I'm 86 years old. I'll just pretend I don't know what's going on. And it was just, that's who he was. I mean, he, as Marion said, knowing he was helping was why he did what he did. And we wouldn't have her if we didn't have him, so thank you.
Thank you for that very touching story, and that does epitomize everything I've heard about Dr. Mudd. So thank you, Marion, for you and your family for coming. I know we've invited you to stay and join us in the reception and dinner, and hopefully you're able to stay.